Good afternoon and good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tanis Glenn, and I am a sales support specialist at Aspira Retirement Living. The team members I support are responsible for helping seniors make the important decision to enter the next stage of life, one we hope will start at Aspira Retirement Living. To take you through this presentation today, I am pleased to introduce you to Kim Eamon. As a speaker and lover of plants, Kim's passion for health and wellness guided her back to her roots 18 years ago. Growing up on the family farm, she experienced what garden fresh tastes like and the importance of preserving the produce to utilize it through the year. In 2012, she is one of the first partners to purchase a tower garden in Canada, an aeroponic growing tree. Tower gardens are a way to grow an abundance of food in a small space, using less water than traditional dirt gardens. Her love for growing morphed into 10 towers and a business as a seedling provider. Kim and her husband also grow 4 large dirt gardens and a greenhouse on their acreage in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. They start their dirt seedlings in the greenhouse in preparation for transplanting into the dirt gardens in the spring. They also host live tower garden workshops and invite people to tour their gardens. Also joining us today is Adam Blacklock, Regional Culinary Partner for our retirement division at Aspira. Adam oversees culinary operations at our retirement communities and is dedicated to creating a dining experience that cultivates happiness in the daily lives of residents at Aspira. Now, on to the fun part. Join us as we explore the connection between plants and wellness. Learn to grow your own sustainable food, from starting seeds to transplanting outdoors. We'll cover essential gardening tips, including soil preparation and the benefits of plant towers for urban gardens, and discover how gardening improves your mental health and fosters a deep connection with nature. As we move through the presentation today, please feel free to pop any questions you have into the chat. We look forward to hearing your questions and comments. Now over to you, Kim.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Tanis, and I appreciate being asked to share my passion with you all today. So, gardening for mental health, it really is more than just physically looking after plants and planting. It does so much for us emotionally, spiritually, and it also does take us back to those roots when, we may have grown up with grandparents who planted big gardens and such. So it really is much more than just planting a garden. So every time we eat or drink, we are either feeding disease or we're fighting it. So plant-based foods are a good source of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, which is absolutely essential for bodily processes. So what does healthy look like? A lot of people might think, oh, I do pretty good, I eat pretty healthy. It's when we go back to our roots and when we're eating fresh off the land, it does so much more for us, as opposed to when you're going to the grocery store and you buy some lettuce, the nutrition is not the same. It is much more nutrient dense when you're picking it fresh and eating it from local or your own gardens, of course. So every whole food has a pattern. I love this part of the presentation today. Every food has a pattern that resembles a body organ or physiological function. And the Chinese figured this out over 5,000 years ago. So when you look at a carrot, the carrot looks like a human eye. And you've heard, eat your carrots, they're good for your eyes. Well, there's scientific reasons behind it because of the nutrients that are absolutely in the carrot. The tomato has 4 chambers, it's red, as does our heart. So the tomatoes are good for our heart. Broccoli, the tiny tips on broccoli head looks like hundreds of cancer cells. Broccoli is a really good cancer fighter. Citrus fruit looks like the female mammograms. The kidney bean looks like the human kidney. So it's really quite fascinating when you're seeing the resemblance for body parts. The sweet potato looks like the pancreas. The walnut looks like the human brain. Walnuts have good fat. Our brain needs a lot of fat, good healthy fat. And we have to remember to keep that in mind. So walnuts are wonderful to help our brain. Celery looks like bones. Onions look like blood cells. Grapes resemble the alveoli of the lungs. Isn't it quite fascinating when you see the resemblance? The avocado is good for the health and functioning of the womb and the cervix of the female. Figs, they can increase the mobility and sperm count and helps to overcome male sterility. Ginger looks like the stomach and also aids in digestion. I think a lot of people know that is like having a cup of ginger tea or having some ginger can help settle some of your stomach issues that you might have sometimes after having a meal. The olives assist in the health and function of the ovaries. So really, the good news isn't that fruits and vegetables are good for you. It's that they are so good for you, they can save your life. So let's talk about growing food, gardening for the body and the soul. Many of us grew up on the land, so to speak. So our parents, our grandparents grew large dirt gardens and then would preserve the produce to get us through the winter. So there really is something magical in growing plants and seeing the end result. A miracle really from a small seed. So plants give us oxygen for the lungs and for the soul. So there's multiple things that happen when we are gardening, when we're in the dirt, when we're touching the plants, when we're just smelling the flowers. There's so much physically and mentally that happens for us. It is so good for our health. So most of us are familiar with planting in the dirt or the soil. And just like farmland, the soil becomes deficient in natural minerals, which is really the food for the plants. So for plants to thrive and be healthy, we need to add things to the soil to help feed it. So we can do this by adding compost, by adding peat moss, or by adding manure. But it's really important that the manure is cured for a few years. You don't want to use fresh manure. It needs to start composting and breaking down. So every few years, we do add peat moss and manure, both that's been cured for a few years. When you add the manure, though, you may experience more weeds that year. That's just part of it. It's just adding food in there. So that's the, kind of the ripple effect of that. But your garden plants will thrive so much when we add that nutrition back to the soil. We personally also fertilize tomatoes and peppers a couple of times in the year to help them to produce better in our dirt gardens as well. So the picture on the left-hand side, that's one of our dirt gardens. The picture on the right-hand side is not our garden, but is a great example for showing you how you companion garden. So there's science behind companion gardening. So meaning that carrots grow well near beans, onions, peppers. So when you're planting when you're planning to plant your garden this year, maybe you want to do a little bit of research to see what plants will work really good and complementing each other because they can produce better when they have the companions that will help them. So that's always fascinating to me. So we start our plants at the end of March in our greenhouse in preparation for some of those plants that we're going to transplant into our dirt gardens. So to do that, we purchase fresh potting soil every year, and we use a container that's a little bit bigger. You can kind of see how big that is, because what that does is when we plant them, we're not having to transplant into a bigger thing again. So we just plant them right into a little container that is going to get us right through to when it's time to transplant them into the dirt gardens. Oh, and if you notice, we have a little helper in the greenhouse sometimes sitting on the table there. Love having the little animals with us. So on the left-hand side there is tomatoes. So we start our tomatoes, we start our peppers, we start our onions, different things like that. And so you can see they're pretty, they're, I'm going to say probably 3 weeks growth on the one at the beginning there. Then you can see as you progress, they get bigger and bigger. And so in the greenhouse setting, the plants grow faster because it's like a tropical environment. So it does make a difference. So if you are starting your own garden seeds, be sure that they can be in a warm spot and a warm, cozy spot. If that can't be in your house, if it's a little bit cooler, then I would consider purchasing a grow light to put over top because it creates more warm environment and it's going to help those plants to grow for you. We start our onions by seed only. You can get onion sets, but we have found that it's more successful. The onions do way better when we actually start them by seed. So again, we start them in the trays like that. And then when we're ready to transplant them in, I just separate them out and plant them in the rows. What's really great is that with the onions, we dry them so that it gets us through winter. We still have some onions from last garden season to get us through until we're like, we most often we might have to buy a few, but really we can get through most of the year with it. Here's peppers. So we do start our peppers again in the greenhouse. So over on the left-hand side, those are probably 3-4 weeks old. And then I don't have another picture to show you the in between, but when they're ready to transplant into our soil garden, we protect them because because the stems aren't as strong when they're being grown in the greenhouse because it's more controlled environment, meaning there's not much wind in there and things like that. So we will protect them. So we have some recycled coffee cans, or you can get some other things. So we'll protect them for a couple of weeks until they get established in the dirt. Then we'll remove those. And then you can see they will vine ripen right in the garden and they look so beautiful, so colorful. This just shows you in the greenhouse how the seedlings are getting bigger and bigger on the left-hand side. And then the really important thing as well is you want to climatize those plants off before you're putting them into the dirt. So if you're a person that goes to a nursery and buys your seedlings to put into the dirt, be sure that you're having them outside for a few days before you actually put them into the dirt, because it's a shock to them. And I'm gonna say at least a week. And so for the first few days, you're going to take them outside, let them sit outside all day. Then you're going to bring them back in for night. And then eventually you'll leave them out all night to help them climatize and get used to being outside. But we still will protect, like I said, the peppers, because just to help them get strengthened and get them conditioned into our Saskatchewan environment. We have a lot of wind here at different times. So, it's important to protect those plants. You've been looking after them or you've purchased them and you want them to survive. And so that's a way to help them to climatize and get used to being in the dirt. This on the left-hand side is just a garden that's probably about 3 weeks old when it was planted. So it's just very, it's so rewarding, again, the mental health, like taking my coffee out there, watering, and just being in the plant life. It's just such a beautiful, calming place to be. This is sunflowers. So we'll have actually, they'll just grow themselves from some of the seeds that have been left over. And so I'll transplant them. So I'll just take them out and I'll put them into my row or wherever I want them. But what's really great is they have such a great part of being in your garden. One, it helps to attract those bees. It helps to attract them to help pollinate some of your different crops that they need to be pollinated. The other thing is the birds. The birds will feed off of them. Then we also sometimes will have squirrels that come into our yard. And so they'll eat these before they'll eat some of our stuff. So it's like, here, this is for you, my birds and my wildlife. And then they will more often leave the cucumbers alone. They'll leave, some of the other things alone because they're so attracted to these. So I love them. Love, love, love sunflowers. Strawberries are amazing when you are growing them, or if you know somebody who's growing them in their yard. And so we have a few dirt beds of strawberries. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, so we cover them in the winter with straw to help protect them. We take that off pretty soon. It's a little cold here yet, so probably in another week, we'll be taking all the straw off to let them start getting established. But what we do then is after they start to get looking like they're green, they're ready. So I will take that straw again and I will put that on the open dirt, because strawberries have a shallow root system. So if it gets really, really hot, they're going to dry out and they're going to stop producing for you. So we have found over the years, just putting straw there helps to keep the soil moist, and they do so much better. So there's a huge tip for strawberry beds, to have some protection on the open ground so that they don't dry out on you. We've also done strawberries in the tower garden, and I'll get into towers in just a moment here. And but in the greenhouse. So some people have asked about doing strawberries indoors with the tower, but we feel that they work way better when you're growing them outdoors, strawberries, for what you're getting off of them for the produce. But they just taste so amazing. So with the tower garden system, you can grow in a dark basement, you can grow in your living room, you can grow out on your patio, in your garage, in a greenhouse, a sunroom, really multiple places that you can grow them. When you're growing indoors, we do have the grow lights, which is acting like the sun because plants need day and plants need night. So these are just some applications of where you can grow the towers, and they just look so beautiful. I just look at them sometimes and think they don't even look real because they look so beautiful, but they really are. And that is what is so fresh and why it's so healthy for you, because it's fresh. So there is science behind the tower garden. They did some clinical research. And what they did is at the University of Mississippi, they grew some in really good quality dirt and tower garden. And I believe it was broccoli. So they grew the same crop in both. What they found was on the tower garden, there was 30% more yield. The antioxidant was good in both the really good soil and the tower. So it was really good nutrition in both of them, but it took less time and less work and less land and less water in the tower versus the soil. So it's pretty amazing. Kind of we need to use both really, because there's some things that we can only grow in dirt, like your potatoes, your corn, your carrots, things like that. So there's places for both, but this gives you a wide variety of things that you can do and grow faster. So the tower garden is an advanced technology. It's technically called aeroponics. So it's made from food grade plastic. It will grow clean produce for decades to come. So it has food safety. There's no contamination. We don't have to worry about recalls on the produce. There's food security in the way that you can always have fresh produce available, and it's sustainable. It's going to last for years and years to come. And so what I particularly love about this technology is that this unit speaks to soil conservation and water preservation. So there's no dirt. It uses 90% less water, 90% less space than your dirt. So there's no weeding, there's no tilling either. It's just the plants themselves. So this is, and when I say that you don't grow in dirt, so the tower garden technology, we grow in a soilless medium, and it's called rock wool, which is spun rock. And it's just a hard sponge. It's very, very light when it's dry, and then it has a little bit more weight to it when it's wet. So when a person gets a tower garden kit, you get a starter kit with it. And so you can start your own plants. And so how you would do that is you need to submerge that rock wool for at least 30 minutes. Longer is fine, but 30 minutes minimum. And then you're going to dump most of that water out. You're going to plant your seeds. You're going to take that and put it in the dark for 24 to 48 hours. Then you're going to bring that tray out and put it under the light, making sure that that rock wool doesn't dry out, because you need to water it once or twice a day. Because it's like the container. So a plant doesn't need dirt to grow. A plant just needs a container for water and nutrients. And the rock wool provides that container. So water is very, very important. So we need to make sure, whether you're in a city, town, most of our water is going to be chlorinated. Chlorine can potentially kill the plants. So you just need to make sure there's no chlorine in it, and you can do a couple of things. One really simple thing you can do is you can get some pails, put the water in, let the chlorine evaporate off, not having a lid on it because the chlorine needs to evaporate off. It will after a couple of days. Or you can do it really quickly if investing in an RV filter, and that's just something that hooks like for a camper unit, and you just attach it to the end of a garden hose and it filters out the chlorine for you. So those are two things that you can do to be sure that there's no chlorine in it. The other thing is that if your house or if your facility has soft water, you don't want to use the soft water either, because that salt water can potentially kill the plants as well. And so you need to go to a raw source before it goes through the soft water unit. So what you do is you would fill up, so each of the tower gardens has a water reservoir basin on the bottom. So that's where you put your water in. And then it comes with nutrients. So it comes with earth minerals, the food to feed the plants. And what's really great about this mineral combination is that it's one size fits all. So it doesn't matter if you're growing tomatoes or peppers or lettuce or herbs, this nutrients works for everything you're growing. It's so simple. You just add it to the water. There's a pH test kit. You test the pH, and it has a little graph on there that it needs to be between 5.5, 6.5. So it really, really is pretty simple to set up and use and grow. This is just showing you after 2 to 3 weeks after the seeds have been growing, these are healthy seedlings. And so you'll notice that they're a little bit shorter, they're a little bit stockier. These are healthy seedlings. So when you're starting seeds and you're noticing that they're really getting tall and lanky and thin looking, not necessarily healthy looking, that just means that the light isn't close enough. So you need to make sure that the light is closer. So keep that in mind if that's something that you are going to start your own seeds for putting into your soil gardens as well, knowing if they need more light. It's that simple. So the tower garden has ports, and these little net pots are in those ports, and it's kind of like a colander when you're rinsing off vegetables and stuff. And so when you're planting, you want to make sure that the rock wool is inserted right to the bottom of it for two reasons. One, we want it to get established in there, the roots properly, and we want those roots to be watered properly. So the tower itself has a pump in the bottom, and it pumps up every hour and then waters all the roots in the tower. So that's how they get fed. And so that's where the rock wool doesn't dry out, because it can't. Otherwise, your plants will die if they get dried out. So it comes with two timers. One timer is for the water pump. The other timer is on the lights itself. So very simple as well. The timer for the water pump, you just set it for I for indoors, or O if you're growing outdoors. Then it automatically runs what it needs to. The lights is on its separate timer, and you need to plug in the lights separately to the plug-in, not through the water pump timer, because otherwise they're going to click on and off, and that's not what they're meant to do. So you want the lights running for 14 to 16 hours when you're growing indoors. This is going to help better understand how they take up less space than your dirt gardens. So these 4 towers are on the deck. They have an extension to them. And the deck is, I'm going to say 18 feet long there, maybe. I don't think it's even that. But in that space, there's 112 plants. And when you think about, wow, if I had 112 plants in the dirt, how much more space that needs. And so that just helps you to understand how it takes less space to grow an abundant amount of food. You also will notice some support rings here. So the support ring is something that you can put on when you're growing things that need support, something like tomatoes or peppers, because they get so big and heavy. So the support cage helps to support them. But if you're just doing lettuce and greens and things like that, you don't need to use a support cage. But I also wanted to point out, you don't need to use the full support cage either, depending what you're growing, as this tower here just has one of them on. So it's versatile. So the support cage is an accessory that you can get with a kit. You can grow all one thing on a tower, or you can grow different things on the tower. So that one there is all kale. This other one here has some kale, some herbs, some different lettuces. So it's really about what you are going to consume, what you are going to eat. Keeping also in mind that some things take longer. So your tomatoes take much longer to produce, your peppers take much longer to produce, but your lettuces grow very quickly. So, it's kind of the combination of things that, that there's some things that are going to take longer. It's no different versus growing in dirt versus the tower. If the packet of seeds says 60 days, that's approximately what it's going to take, no matter what, which way you're going to grow. So these are the two different styles of tower kits that we have. The one on the right side or sorry, the one on the left side is a little bit smaller. It holds 13 gallons of water in the bottom. And the one with the green reservoir bottom, which a lot of the homes have that one, that's the Flex, it holds 20 gallons of water. So what I want you to notice here is at the lights and how it's so important that you get the lights as close as you can to those plants. So the lights are really tucked in close on this one here because they're just baby new and we want them to stay healthy. We want them to stay stronger. And once they start getting bigger like this one, you just pull out the light from the bottom, keep it, like just kind of keep pulling them out, but just making sure that all the plants are getting light. What I love about the lights is that it really is like sun. And so for people who live in places that there's a lot of cloud, you know, or the seasonal thing, you can sit beside one and it just is so mentally fulfilling because it gives you that you're outside, and especially when they run, because it's kind of like a waterfall and then you've got the light. So it can be very therapeutic and very good for our mental health as well. This is just showing some in our basement, quite a few towers. And then this one here outside, these are pepper towers. So they have full support cages on them because they get to be like a tree. They get ginormous, actually, they're peppers. And, but they grow beautifully. This is just showing you some different things. And, you know, we all know that we should eat more fruits and vegetables, and we all can improve on that, I believe. The convenience of walking up to your tower or out to your garden and cutting lettuce off to make a salad or snipping some herbs off to make your meal. Once you start eating this way, you can't go back. So this is just showing vine ripened tomatoes, a pepper, chard, edible flowers. Celery is great on the tower, and the leaves even taste like celery. This flavor is so much more potent when you're using herbs. You don't need very many because the flavor is there. It's very, very strong. The other thing about the tower garden is an example, kale is so tender and soft. All the leaves are softer versus what you can get at a grocery store. What I like to do is I will make fresh juice sometimes, and I don't have a juicer. I just have a good blender. So I will go and get a couple of beets. I will take some, you know, some greens. I will take different things and just throw them into my blender with water and use a strainer to strain them out. There's still a little bit of pulp in there, but that's okay. And it's just a way to get really good, healthy, fresh, organically growing fresh food. I don't know who likes to eat a salad for breakfast. I don't. But what I will do is I will go get fresh greens and I will add them to my morning smoothie. So I have frozen fruit. I'll add a bunch of greens in there, plant milk, and I make my own plant milk. That's another workshop. And then a plant protein shake mix. And this sustains me for the morning. It fills me up. So it is getting a whole bunch of plants in real quick first thing in the morning. Different salads, it's like taking different things is just amazing. So I just want to point out the nasturtium. So there's edible flowers, the nasturtium itself, the leaves and the flower is edible. So it's fun. And I'm going to describe that it's kind of like a pepper. It's kind of, it has a little bit of hotness to it, but it's so fun adding to a salad, adding to a drink, adding to dessert. It just looks so pretty and it's fun to try different things. And just taking all different fresh things and putting together, chop it up in a salad, it's like a party in your mouth. It is not, you know, it's not what you're expecting. Protein bowl or Buddha bowl, love it. Adding more plants in like your quinoa, chickpeas, fresh salad, all of those things. And that is so filling, but it's so good. Or you can do something really simple, taking a few vegetables, some fresh lettuce, and I will get those tins of tuna that are flavored and just add that and pour on some balsamic vinegar. You know, it's just a way to get good nutrition in. One of my favorite ways to eat kale is a kale salad. So when you're doing kale, you want to remove the stem, but I'm not throwing that stem away. I'm using that then in my smoothie the next day, or I'm going to juice it. So you remove the stem, you massage the leaves. That just helps break it down. So you're going to digest it. And I just do something very, very simple. Dried cranberries, sunflower seeds, feta cheese, and poppy seed dressing with kale. It is amazing. It's the combination altogether. And it's so easy. Pak choy. This is just showing you an example of pak choy. Take it off, chop it up, stir fry. The herbs, basil, I love making pesto, and you don't need very many leaves. The other thing about herbs is you can dry them. They will stay dark green. They will stay flavorful. They will smell great for a long time. Like I'm gonna say 3 years even. Here's another edible flower. This is a viola. And the leaves are not edible, but the flower is. And I would describe the flavor of the viola like a wintergreen mint. So love adding them to like a dessert or to a salad. It looks really pretty as well. Let's talk microgreens, raw food. So our body recognizes it. So sprouts, you may have heard of sprouts. They're the first stage. Microgreens are the second stage of that growth. Microgreens really are the seedlings of vegetables and herbs. So they are a functional superfood, which means that they can provide key nutrients in a very practical way. This still blows me away, and I learned this about a year ago. The antioxidant levels measured up to 40 times higher than those recorded in mature leaves. What I'm meaning is micro kale is 40 times higher nutrients in it than your mature kale leaves. So microgreens, we really should try to get many more in. So there's evidence to suggest that microgreens have a high antioxidant content, which means that they can help prevent a range of diseases. The exact type of antioxidant will be dependent upon the plant. So as an example, microgreens from the Brassic family, which include broccoli, they contain high levels of vitamin E, a phenolic antioxidant. So they help. Broccoli is a huge cancer fighter or preventer. So I can't stress that enough. There's so much we can do with food, and they really are pretty easy to grow at home. So how you can eat microgreens: you could have a garnish for a salad, add to soup or a pizza. You could add nutrition to juice or a smoothie. Just throw them in there, aside to a meal or decorating it up. Add flavor and color to an omelet, an alternative to lettuce in a sandwich. Something else that can be an alternative is taking lettuce and using the lettuce leaves in place of bread. So doing a roll. And this, a picture of health. Fresh lettuce and veggies topped with microgreens and edible flowers, poppy seed dressing. It's colorful, beautiful, and it's nutritious. So thank you, Tanis and Natasha, for allowing me to share my passion. For those of you who want to learn more, you can visit us at foxtowersandseedlings.com, or we are on Facebook as Fox Towers and Seedlings as well.
Perfect, thank you. And now I think that you have the slides. Next one's for Adam. So it's your turn to talk a little bit, Adam. There you go.
Thanks very much, Tanis. Appreciate you reaching out for me to be here today. Again, my name is Adam Blacklock. I'm the regional culinary partner with Aspira. I look after all of our chefs and dining room managers, sous chefs, dishwashers, cooks. I make all of our menus. I do all of our recipes. I'm actually doing a lot of recipes today. We're doing 92 recipes today in a vendor kitchen of ours, and they're all focused on plants. So we are actually using no animal protein today. So it's a great day for me to be able to present to you this today. And we can move on to the next slide here. I wanted to talk a little bit about exploring what we do here with plants, with gardening, with our local farmers and such. So the first part of this is to let you know that good quality produce is so important to our mission, to all of our chefs, our culinarians, and it's the cornerstone of cooking and flavor. You don't get a lot of flavor out of just chicken or just fish or just beef or pork. You need to add those aromatic vegetables. And of course, the fresher, the more local, the more organic grown, you're going to get better and better flavor out of them. And of course, better nutrition. We source our produce from local suppliers, and in the growing seasons, which in my neck of the woods in Ottawa is short and sweet, we make relationships with local farmers and markets to make sure that we can show off their fantastic produce. We've scheduled field trips to actual fields to see beautiful produce being grown and get a little bit better of a connection with our local producers. As a new farm owner myself, as of this next month, I'm looking forward to showing off my passion and hopefully sharing it some of it with our chefs and communities. I want to take this great opportunity to share some of the ways gardening makes it into our community. Next slide, please. So our Quinte Gardens community in Belleville is a true sight to see. The backyard garden is absolutely stunning with ponds, plots of herbs and wildflowers, and even, as you can see, some fluffy little ducklings on occasion. It's an absolutely beautiful garden. I can't help but take a stroll before leaving every time I get to visit Quinte Gardens. It's such an inspiration for what can be done with a little hard work and a lot of passion. Next slide, please. Another way that we embody gardening in our communities is by our Aspira pollinator project. So of course, flowers bring a beautiful splash of color to our gardens and vegetable patches, but there's much more than that. Flowers play a big key role in our ecosystem. They can, of course, be edible, and they're perfect for attracting beneficial insects like butterflies and bees, which play an incredible role in producing a lot of our food. The function of our ecosystem rests on the tiny backs of these pollinators, and it's a big burden for their little shoulders to bear. In fact, we rely on pollinators to help produce as much as 1/3 of our food. And so if you look at the next slide there, we'll see some of our awesome pollinating gardens. We'll actually be able to see our winning pollinating garden here shown off on the top left slide there. Just a cute little plot of land. I wanted to share as well, in Ottawa, they have a great program where for the month of June, I don't know if it's to save labor from the city, but they don't mow any parks or lawns or anything from the city wise. So we can really give a great boost to those pollinators, those butterflies, those bees, those different insects. And so we only start mowing our fields, our parks in late June or mid-June or so. So a lot of easy steps there to start your own pollinating garden. Very, very easy to do. You can have you can leave your garden the way it is, leave your lawn the way it is, especially in those early days of summer. You can preferably using fresh native and locally grown plants that are pest and disease resistant. Plants should have different blooming periods to stagger flowering and attract bees throughout the growing season. Bees and pollinators alike prefer purple, yellow, white, and blue flowers with single fragrant blooms. You can consider adding a water feature as well to your garden to provide a little essential fresh water to all these types of pollinators. You can choose compost, natural fertilizers, and insecticides that are approved by Health Canada to control garden pests. You can choose compost, or sorry, pardon me. Garden maintenance is also key. Pruning to remove spent flower heads, deadheading, as you would call it, as needed to encourage new growth and long-lasting flowering season to keep those pollinators in your garden. Avoid overwatering. Give your plants water in the morning when the temperatures are cooler, and use the mulch to preserve the moisture in the soil. This will help to establish a good root system, conserve water, prevent evaporation, and of course, applying too much can damage certain plants. Enjoy your garden, talk to it, walk in it. They can feel you, or at least I think so. And take lots of pictures because it's great to share out, and who knows, you might inspire somebody else. And so this was a wonderful project that we did. We have over 15 pollinator gardens in our communities, and I really hope that we'll have probably near double that this year. Next slide, please. So gardening with our residents, we have a few different ways that residents can garden with us. Many of our communities and a very large amount of our communities have garden beds that are, or garden bed plots that are well raised for residents to use. They can reserve them at the beginning of the season or before the season starts, bring their own seeds, or maybe assemble a group to go out on a field trip to a nursery, so they can all kind of do it at the same time. It's wonderful to see them full of life in the summer and the residents enjoying things in their homes, in their suites, or even when they donate them to our kitchens to use, and they can really point out their passions as well. Like I said, our beds are raised nice and tall to make easy access, and they're filled with great quality soil. Next slide, please. The other way, we have one beautiful built-in greenhouse at our Red Oak community in Canada in Ottawa. We are planning uh, a great garden there for this year. It's going to roll each year and grow, no pun intended, of course. We are in the planning stages of using this beautiful space to grow delicious produce all year round. And we'll look to residents to support and enjoy the space, whether it's watering in the morning or weeding as they enjoy a cup of tea in the room. It's also nice and toasty in there, so in the winter you can take a stroll through it and really feel that warmth and feel the all the fresh air that the plants give off. Chef James Rennick is looking forward to having the space filled with color to use in his day-to-day cuisine and working hard to get it ready, get some raised beds in there to get it ready for the growing season. And that's it for me. Thank you so much, Tanis, for having me. And of course, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
That was so wonderful. Thank you to the both of you. It's making me very excited to be heading into our next season where we get to plant and grow. And for me, it's mostly walking and enjoying. My husband does all the planting and the growing. He's the green thumb. So I want to thank everybody also for joining us today and for sitting with us through these great presentations. If you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat right now. But if not, then all I'd like to say is have a wonderful day. And I hope you get to enjoy the rest of it and spend some time in a garden doing something you love.